fellow with the American Federation, or excuse me, the Federation of American Scientists. He's a former faculty member and researcher at the Harvard Medical School and the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, and was the first whistleblower on the COVID pandemic. And if you don't follow him on Twitter, you need to get over there. His Twitter handle is Dr. Eric Ding, D-R-E-R-I-C-D-I-N, and he's just got a fabulous Twitter feed. Dr. Feigl-Ding, welcome back to the program. I see that Europe is locking down. Austria just today, starting today, is saying if you're not fully vaccinated, you may not leave your house. They're locking down all non-vaccinated people. Other parts of Europe are dealing with a fourth, what looks like a fourth wave. Every time this has hit Europe, it's followed, just weeks or months later, it's hit us. What is going on here? Is this still the Delta variant? Why is it making a resurgence? Is it the weather?
Yeah, thanks for having me. There is definitely a crisis. It's ongoing. It's 5-alarm fire. It's a wildfire that's completely out of control in Europe. It started in Eastern Europe. It's really grown into Western Europe as well as the UK. And the lockdown is a partial lockdown for those who are unvaccinated. But even then, it's not enough. There's not enough vaccination rates. There's not enough masking. Mitigations are previously completely dropped by Germany, Denmark, Netherlands, and they all are now having record all-time number of cases. And yes, deaths are rising too, in addition to critically overloaded hospitals. It's like a deja vu, but it is definitely going to restart another winter wave for the U.S. as well. We've seen it time and time again. What happens there ends up happening here within a few weeks or a few months.
So then it sounds like the common sense explanation is this is just a combination of we thought we were okay and we let down our guard, and winter is here and we're going indoors.
Exactly. It's a lot of the indoor. As the weather gets cold, people stop opening their windows, start gathering indoors again with the windows closed, and that's just a recipe for disaster with an airborne virus. And, we haven't really solved the fundamentals of the virus yet. The virus is still spreading. There's not enough immunity. There's obviously sometimes waning immunity. And we really need 3 shots. We shouldn't just call it booster, but we really need 3 shots because Israel is, by the way, is at 0 coronavirus deaths because they have mandated 3 shots. You're not fully vaxxed until you're 3-shot vaxxed. We really need that plus the other indoor mitigations. And I just want to tell you, like, for example, if you're on a vegan diet for 1 month after your high cholesterol, and then you suddenly stop, your cholesterol may have dropped for 1 month, but then the moment you switch back to what you were doing before, without solving the underlying disease, you're going to get back to where you started, and it's going to run like a muck again. So you have to actually solve and cure the underlying problem, and that is to really, really get to almost zero elimination for the virus. We have to flush the damn virus out of our country. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Exactly. Now, there's also a new variant that's floating around Europe. It's popped up in a couple of countries. It seems not to have become hyper-prevalent. It's originated in Africa. Forgive me for not remembering the name of it, but what's the latest on various mutations and anything that we need to worry about there?
Yeah, some of the other new mutations haven't really panned out yet. There's the mu and there's a few others. There is one in the UK. It's called Delta Plus, AY4, but it's growing very slowly. It's now 15% of the UK. It's about 10% more contagious and 10% more severe than the original, than Delta, but it's still much more contagious than the original virus. But it's not the underlying reason here for this surge. This surge is back to the fundamentals. There's airborne transmission. We let down our guard. We're ignored that the virus is airborne. We don't have enough masks, premium masks, and we don't have enough mitigations to disinfect the air or ventilate the air indoors. And, of course, vaccines on top. We're just not doing that again because people are gathering for the holidays, and that's what really worries me. We have Thanksgiving here in the U.S. It's going to super spread. Cases are already rising in the northern states. You should see Minnesota right now. It's increasing exponentially. And, with holidays like Christmas, it's going to spread even more. We're going to have a double whammy in the coming weeks, and people are basically going to suffer the crisis and calamity of basically ignoring public health advice. And many of our leaders in the states and governments are ignoring the fact that the virus is still here. Many of them are pretending that COVID is over. COVID is not over. It is just beginning the winter wave, and we're going to see a really bad winter wave that is going to likely be worse than the summer wave.
I've been, reading the literature on viral diseases and epidemics, pandemics. Laurie Garrett's got a book that came out well over a decade ago about this that I read back then, actually. There's this theory that some of the various viruses that we might call the common cold, at one point were actually deadly viruses to the human species, and as they mutated over time, they became more contagious and less deadly, to the point that they basically became nuisance viruses. Do you think there's a possibility that will happen with COVID?
It's possible that will happen, but we should not play that game right now. By the way, that process took many, many decades and hundreds of years.
Correct.
We should not play that kind of long game. We should try to return to normal with actually eliminating the virus as much as possible. And we don't talk about worldwide. It just means like local eradication. Because that is really, really what we have to think about. We're talking about not just deaths, but overloaded hospitals, healthcare bills, and deferred surgeries for other people's illnesses, and of course long COVID. The crisis of long COVID is very, very serious, which will tax our healthcare system for decades to come. We should not use quote unquote learn to live with the virus in the ignore the virus and let it spread mentality. We need to get it as low as possible, immunize as much as possible, and then let it basically simmer in the background at a very, very, very low level, if not zero. And then we can talk about, learning to live with the virus at low rates, not when there is a wildfire. You can't learn to live with a wildfire in your backyard, and that is what we have.
Well, it's like you're talking about getting it to where it's like measles or polio. The virus is still out there, but we basically got it under control through immunization and public health measures. You mentioned long COVID. There's some fascinating research now coming out suggesting, the original assumption, I think, on the part of a lot of people was that long COVID might have been caused by basically kind of micro strokes, because it's such a clotting disease that you get blood clots in muscles that disable those muscles, or blood clots in the brain that cause, confusion and dementia and things. But now there's this evidence indicating that, as many as a third to a half of people who had symptomatic COVID are having long COVID, and that it seems to have to do with the immune system shifting into a new state, into a different state, into a continuously hyperreactive state. What do we know about that?
Yeah, I think long COVID is this big black box. We just don't know enough about it. We do know that it has lots of organ damage across a range of organs, and that could also be that the virus was never cleared because it resides in your central nervous system, your CNS, because your central nervous system is a completely different immune system from your antibodies and everything. It's called privileged immunity. Basically, your immune system can't attack it because it's a special bubble that your body creates. And the problem is that, hence, a lot of the neurological damage we think is from long COVID. But the good news, by the way, the vaccine actually reduces long COVID symptoms and clears it in about half the people. That's really, really good news. And the reason why we probably think is it's an extra immunity clearance support. But, it's clearly a long, pernicious problem that we're going to have to deal with. And this is together another reason not to, play dangerous games and play this crazy Russian roulette that some of us are pushing with, learn to live with the virus. There is so much we don't know, and I think the debilitating cost on our healthcare system and our society is something we should not try to, gamble with. In
I'm
any
completely
way,
with you.
I think it is really, really dangerous.
Last question here. These antiviral pills are on the verge of coming out. Molnupiravir and Paxlovid. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing them, but drugs that can change the course of the illness if they're taken, early on, but they're just oral, they pick them up at your local drugstore kind of drugs. How is that going to change things, or are you concerned? Frankly, I'm worried that these are going to cause, particularly in the red states, people to say, oh, another reason not to get vaccinated, because if I get sick, I'll just take a pill.
Yeah, these pills are a double-edged sword because in many ways, it definitely saves lives. But by the way, molnupiravir, some countries have authorized the emergency, but there is still a lot of concerns about the mutagenic, as in read that as potential cancer and mutation causing long-term effects we don't know about. And Paxlovid, and also these costs are going to also drive up our healthcare system. It will prevent you from dying, but it doesn't stop infection. And can I say something? Stopping infections is so much more important. It's kind of like you can give a person a fish and feed him for a day, or you can teach him how to fish and feed him for a lifetime, and teach him how to stop the infection. And right now, all these drugs are basically giving a pill and solving their hospitalization for a day. It doesn't actually solve the greater contagious exponential increase, because the virus can exponentially increase overnight. The supply of these drugs and the money to pay them cannot exponentially just appear and suddenly, help solve all this exponentially. So I don't think they're the long-term solution. The long-term solution is reducing and cutting the virus as low as possible.
Purge the virus from our pool of humans. Dr. Eric Feigl-Ding, over on Twitter, DrEricDing. Check it out. Dr. Feigl-Ding, thanks again for dropping by. It's always great talking with you.